Hi everybody, my name is Audra Golden and I did my presentation on the comparative policing practices of the United States versus Japan. So during this presentation, I'm going to be analyzing the community policing methods of both of those countries. This presentation will include an introduction as well as a purpose of the analysis. And then there will be a thorough analysis for both of the countries, specifically on the topics of training, technology, and accountability for both the United States and in Japan. Towards the end of the presentation, there will be a comparison as well as recommendations as to what could potentially help methods moving forward. Community policing is a philosophy which focuses on involving the community in law enforcement's effort to reduce crime. It focuses on the idea that police officers are not limited to their traditional duties to enforce and control, but are also able to carry out their work and draw on community involvement to address issues of crime within their area. So one of the theories involving community policing is that the best people to identify the issues within an area are those who reside within the community. The argument is that the population residing within that area may actually be the best to assist in identifying the social issues that are creating crime, disorder, and fear within their own backyard. Of the analysis. In other words, why is this an important topic for us to be looking into today? Community policing has been largely implemented in agencies all over the world, including by the United States. This method actually became popular in the United States in the 90s after several years of tension and negative views by the public towards the police. In fact, a survey that was conducted in 1997 actually reported that 85% of the survey sample had responded that they had either already implemented community policing or had planned to implement community policing. All the way across the world from the United States, Japan had already implemented community policing when their system actually completely was changed and reshaped in the late 1940s. Today, Japan is known consistently for their low crime rates, as well as their high rates of public opinion of the police. It has been argued that the best way to analyze whether a current system is achieving its goal is to compare it to which of the systems appears to be succeeding. So for that reason, this analysis is going to compare the methods of community policing in the United States and the methods in Japan to determine where, if any, improvements can be made in the US. In the United States, we have what is called a fragmented system of law enforcement, which basically means that the system is made up of several smaller agencies as opposed to one centralized department, which is in control over the entire nation. So this system allows each jurisdiction to be able to maintain responsibility for implementing and maintaining their own training, policies, procedures, payroll, all of those different things, as well as allocating their funds to the areas where they feel they're most needed. In the United States, federal agencies do not hold the authority over how these systems are implemented by individual police departments throughout the nation. So in the United States, there are currently 73 federal agencies, 50 state agencies, about 3,063 county agencies, and 12,501 city agencies. So as you can see, as we move down from the state agencies to county, and then to the smallest agencies, which are usually the city agencies, there's a higher number of the city agencies versus state agencies throughout the nation. Again, each of these are responsible for implementing their own training standards, policies. They have their own budget implementation. All of those are regulated by each of these individual jurisdictions. So the community policing philosophy makes fundamental changes to the areas of policing. These changes do kind of shift the way the officers respond to crime, as well as the way that they search for solutions to that criminal activity. And a lot of that actually happens at the moment that they are responding and making those split-second decisions. So because of this huge shift, it is crucial that officers undergo both initial training and continued training in law enforcement in general, as well as specifically geared towards community policing. In the United States, training is a very vast topic because, again, each agency is responsible for its own training implementation. However, the states in the United States, in the U.S., they do set their own specific requirements for the minimum requirements that must be followed in each of those states. So some of the requirements that must be met in these states are a minimum age requirement. In most states, that minimum age requirement is 21 years of age. Officers are required to have a high school diploma. They must have completed an accredited police academy, and they must have completed a background investigation. Now, what the background investigation entails, that is left up to the jurisdiction, as well as specifically what the police academy itself teaches. As long as it is an accredited police academy, that would meet the requirements of the state. Mentioned before, ongoing training is also extremely important, related to policing in the United States. Officers are also required to participate in training each year. This training is usually related to new legislature that is passed at the beginning of the year, so new laws that are coming into effect. They are also required to train on changes to existing legislature. So laws that are being slightly amended, the officers are responsible for understanding exactly what the new laws are, as well as the changes to the existing laws. Officers are also required to train on new technology and possibly new technology that will be implemented into their agency. And lastly, officers are required to train on skills that they must upkeep but don't get to use on a daily basis. So skills that could possibly, they would lose their, they don't practice on a daily basis. So they want to make sure that they are able to use these if they have to in an emergency situation. So they will be required to keep up that training for those skills. Some of that training would be firearm training, defensive tactics, as well as CPR training. In the United States, they do use several different types of technology. Technology has been a bit of a sensitive topic in the United States as it relates to privacy and the rights of citizens. However, it has become a very effective tool for community policing. Over the last 20 years, technology has become more readily available and affordable for citizens. So this has allowed for opportunities for a collaborative effort between both community members and police officers. Some examples of this would be doorbell cameras. So for example, if a victim calls for service because their house has been burglarized, they may be able to assist in the investigation by showing law enforcement officers the video of the suspect on their camera versus having to give a description of the suspect just based on their memory. Dashboard cameras on their vehicle, personal cell phones. We've seen video footage of a stranger pulling out their cell phone if they are witnessing an assault that happens on the street, that sort of thing. As well as social media. There are also several different mobile applications, one of which is an application that's called Stay Safe. This is an app for cell phones that will actually alert an emergency contact with a GPS location of the phone if the owner of the phone does not arrive at their predetermined location by a specific time. And then that way the emergency contact can contact law enforcement or seek help however they need to. Additionally, technology has become a useful aid specifically for the efficiency and safety of law enforcement officers as well. Law enforcement officers in the United States use geographic information systems, also referred to as GIS maps. These are used to show areas where crime rates are higher, and they indicate to both law enforcement and to the public where potential hotspots are located. Officers in the United States also are starting to use something called automated license plate readers, also known as ALPRs. These are cameras that are fixed to the officer's dashboard of their patrol vehicle, and it actually scans the license plate of vehicles in traffic. The machine will run the license plate through a database to determine the owner of the vehicle and to check to see if the vehicle has been reported stolen. So this is essential for officer safety because it gives them that crucial information regarding the vehicle and the owner of the vehicle prior to the officer conducting a traffic stop and making contact with a potentially dangerous subject. All right, the next topic we're going to be discussing is accountability within the United States. As mentioned previously, the United States does operate under that fragmented system of law enforcement, which means that each jurisdiction is responsible for implementing its own system of accountability for police investigations into misconduct. And you will hear me repeat that during this presentation because it is such a crucial part of the system of policing in the United States. Since there are thousands of police departments in the United States, it is hard to compare a timeline for each one, but a general complaint from the public is that the investigations into misconduct take too long to complete. There is no guideline set as to what an acceptable timeline would be. Again, this is because each jurisdiction differs a little bit. So while trying to maintain community policing, there is an importance of positive community relationships. It's important for every agency in today's world of community policing to maintain that positive police and citizen relationship. For police departments, this includes being transparent and straightforward regarding how they handle any allegations of police misconduct so that the public understands exactly what is going into that investigation and what they can expect. So local agencies and internal affairs departments, most law enforcement departments have their own internal affairs department specifically for handling these complaints or disciplinary processes. When a complaint has been filed, the department investigates it, and then it may be reviewed by a local prosecutor to determine whether criminal charges will be filed if it is that sort of complaint. One issue with this current system in many jurisdictions is that most complaints are investigated through the same police department which the officer currently works for. For many, this is seen as a bias because there's concerns regarding a lack of accountability. So as mentioned previously in this presentation, federal agencies do have a lack of authority to enforce accountability among the local agencies. This brings us over to Japan. So talking a little bit about Japan's current system of policing. Japan's system of policing was formed during World War II, during the U.S. occupation in Japan in the late 1940s. It is a centralized system, so that means that there is one agency. It's called the National Police Agency, and it is responsible for all of the training standards, pay scales, standardized policies for the entire nation. Under the National Police Agency, the country has also been divided into 47 smaller sections. These are called prefectures, and they handle their own basic police functions, but still under the supervision of the National Police Agency. To provide an additional layer of oversight and accountability, the National Public Safety Commission has administrative supervision powers over the National Police Agency and the departments at the prefecture level as well. The National Public Safety Commission specifically represents the interest and the good sense of the public, and we will talk about that a little bit more throughout this presentation. So as you can see here, it's set up very differently from the United States. There is one national police agency, 47 of those smaller, the prefectures, which again are still part of the National Police Agency, just separated throughout the country, and then the National Public Safety Commission, which just basically is there for oversight and to handle some of that accountability and to make sure that the public, that they have the best interests of the public. Community policing practices in Japan. So Japan really truly has made an effort to implement community policing into their daily police methods in an effort to balance, to maintain the balance between responding to emergency calls and continuing to build relationships within the community. Japanese police forces have implemented the use of something called police boxes. They are also referred to as koban, which is for 3 to 5 officers, or something called a shuzisho, which is made for a solo officer. These police boxes have been built and placed within the communities all over the country so that officers could actually work close to the area which they are responsible for patrolling. The police boxes have provided reassurance to community members because they know that they always have an officer close by, and they have assisted in building relationships between the officers and the community members, because community members can stop by the koban at any time to speak with an officer regarding any concerns that they're having. The police boxes have also assisted with emergency calls for service because the call will automatically be routed to the closest box as well as to the necessary patrol cars or the other mobile units. So today in Japan, there's actually 6,300 koban and about 6,200 shuzisho located within Japan. Japan has very high standards of training for their officers. They have a single training police academy within the country, and it is handled by the National Police Academy, and it's responsible for all of the training standards and academic research related to law enforcement for the entire country. There are 9 total training departments within the academy. The National Police Academy handles all of the initial training for police recruits. This will include either a 6-month training course for recruits who have graduated from a university, or a 10-month training academy for those who are starting straight out of high school. The academy is also responsible for training standards for the required continual training for officers. So in Japan, the officers are required to actually maintain high levels of skilled training in different things. So judo, kendo, shooting, and then arrest techniques. Lastly, in Japan, they also have requirements for officers to have ongoing specialized training as well. Officers are required to train on topics such as criminal forensics and foreign languages. Additionally, an officer who receives a promotion to the rank of a chief inspector, they're actually required to enter the academy again and then complete a whole new course that actually helps them develop their management and leadership skills so that they are better equipped for their new promotion that they have just received. In Japan, much like the United States, they have worked to implement the use of technology into their everyday policing. Similar to the United States, Japan does use the automated license plate readers to assist their officers in conducting the traffic stops and investigations. So as described earlier, these machines are in the patrol units of officers, and they scan license plates of other vehicles in traffic and check them in a database to determine whether or not they have been reported stolen. And this is a very important tool for officer safety. Officers in Japan also utilize a system called Criminal Investigation Support Crime Analysis Tool and System, which is very long, so they shorten it to CIS-CATS. This system helps investigators analyze factors like locations, characteristics of suspects, photographs related to crimes. It's all in one location so that they can determine if there's any patterns that can help them during the investigation. Accountability in Japan. So just to refresh, the National Police Agency is the one overarching police force in the country. Under the supervision of that agency, the country is broken up into the 47 prefectures, which are allowed to carry out day-to-day functions under the supervision of the National Police Agency. As of the year 2020, Japan reported about 296,400 police personnel within the National Police Agency, which makes having a system of accountability a crucial component. In order to maintain neutrality between the police force and the methods within police administration, the Public Safety Commission was formed in order to oversee the management of the police force and the prefectures. The Public Safety Commission is made up of citizen representatives and theoretically actually places the power in the hands of the public when it comes to holding the police accountable. So unlike the United States, where federal agencies do not have this power, the Public Safety Commission can open investigation into into the National Police Agency and the prefecture departments if they are not meeting the adequate standards. So the Public Safety Commission is really responsible for overseeing that accountability and the fact that they are composed of public citizens. It really does show that they are really taking to heart the fact that they're placing the responsibility back into the hands of the public when it comes to investigating matters of police misconduct and accountability. This brings us to the point of the presentation where we're going to be talking about some comparisons. It's important to first identify a little bit of background information on the two countries which are being compared during this analysis. As of 2022, the United States has reported a population of 333 million people. During the same year, Japan reported a population of 125 million people. So the United States has a significantly higher population. However, according to the CIA reporting data, the United States is about 26 times larger than Japan is geography-wise. When looking at specifically crime rates in the year 2022, so the same year where we looked at the population data, the United States reported 1,954 crimes per 100,000 population, whereas Japan only reported about 481 per 100,000 population for that same time period. And you can see here in the graphs just the difference between the crime rates as well as the population comparison. So while the two countries use similar technology during their policing methods, the areas of training and accountability are definitely where we're seeing some of these differences being identified. In the United States, the fragmented system of policing leads to inconsistencies in some of these training standards among the different states, counties, and cities. In the United States, each state does set its own standards for the initial certification of its law enforcement officers and then for what is required for the officer to keep their license up to date. However, it does differ when you move from state to state. And then among the states, each agency, whether it's a state, county, or city, is then responsible for implementing its training and making time for the officers to find that training. In Japan, since the National Police Agency is responsible for all of the training standards and it runs the only police academy, all of that training is standardized and implemented, and it really is implemented from the top down. This ensures that there is consistency throughout their entire system when it comes to training. All of their officers are trained at the same academy. They're all trained the same way. If they are transferred to different areas within the state, chances are that they are going to be trained to handle the situation the same way as another officer. The system does allow for officers to have a thorough understanding of what is expected of them both initially as well as during their ongoing training requirements. When we look into comparing accountability is arguably one of the most important topics to discuss when we're talking about community policing because of the fact that community policing really does rely so heavily on the support of the citizens. When it comes to accountability in the United States, the system being fragmented is causing most of the issues that are being experienced. There's little to no oversight regarding officer misconduct and investigations into complaints other than the internal investigations being conducted by the same agency which the officer is employed, which, as we stated before, could possibly lead to bias as well as other types of issues. In Japan, as previously mentioned, the Public Safety Commission holds the power to investigate when necessary and is made up by citizens. There have also been some differences when it comes to the implementation of community policing in both of these countries. In the United States, some of these officers have been seen as being resistant to the models of community policing. However, this has reportedly been because the methods have been vague and not very straightforward. For example, officers were conducting foot patrols, going to schools to educate children on policing, but they weren't really seeing any type of reflection in the crime rates, so they couldn't really tell if the methods were actually working. In Japan, when community policing was implemented, they physically implemented themselves into the community using police boxes. So they could literally interact with citizens on a daily basis. These are the citizens that they were protecting, and they built those relationships and they strengthened the levels of trust. The citizens would physically see the officers every single day in their community and would build that level of trust because they would see them during their day-to-day lives. They felt comfortable going up to the police boxes and telling them their concerns, coming to them with issues, and really built up those relationships. Recommendations. So the necessity of a fragmented system of policing in the United States. For the United States, while there are several ways that Japan's system, being centralized, has assisted them in implementing a successful community policing system, since the United States is made up of 50 unique states and thousands of smaller jurisdictions, it is actually crucial that all local governments do have the means to utilize their resources directly towards the specific needs of their communities. A fragmented system actually does assist them with accomplishing this. It is not the recommendation of this analysis to move towards a fully centralized system, but to reconstruct the current fragmented system of policing in the United States, so that it's possible to enhance the training, accountability, and to strengthen the community ties. Recommendations for the United States. 3 specific recommendations based on this analysis would be implementation of a standardized training system, as well as a yearly minimum training requirement that is standardized across all levels of law enforcement across the entire country, handled from the top down so that every officer in the country is required to maintain this same standard of training. Implementation of a completely independent body to handle investigations into police misconduct and complaints. So something similar to the Japan Public Safety Commission that is composed of independent citizens. And then finally, the implementation of police boxes, starting with communities which are experiencing the highest crime rates. It is important to note that the societal and cultural differences between the United States and Japan do affect the policing strategies in both countries. Even with a full implementation of the previously listed recommendations, there would definitely be some differences between the two methods of policing. However, with an implementation of standardized training on all levels across the United States, as well as oversight measures of accountability and strengthened community ties, community policing in the United States would be a system to celebrate. Link to my presentation. I hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.